Welcome to our podcast celebrating Scottish culture and entertainment, which is here to sing the praises of books, films, comedy, music, theatre, exhibitions, telly, poetry and all that jazz. I'm Nicola Meehan. I'm an arts writer and broadcaster, and I'll give you the lowdown on what's coming up, what's happening now, what came before and what we love, which is to say that every week I'm here to give you a kick up the arts. Now, before I go any further, I want to remind you that A Kick Up the Arts is coming to a venue near you very soon. I've got some really lovely events to announce very soon, I promise, in Glasgow and Edinburgh and elsewhere. But for now, I am delighted to be coming to Aberdeen's Fab Book Festival, Granite Noir. It's on the 23rd of February. It's a Sunday afternoon. I'll have special guests. We'll have all sorts of chat. It will be great fun. I would love you to join us. I'll tell you more about it in good time, but if you fancy coming anyway, do it. You can get tickets via Granite Noir. But anyway, back to this episode, and if you fancy some festive company or a friendly first foot, then I have got the perfect guest. Jonathan Watson's known and loved as Colin from Two Doors Down, and he was on our tellies at Hogmanay for decades in the hugely loved sketch show Only an Excuse, which actually, unbelievably, first came to life almost 40 years ago. He's also starred in Doctor Who with Jodie Whittaker at the helm, and as Frank opposite Brian Cox as Bob Servant, and as the brilliant Brian in City Lights with the likes of Gerard Kelly, Dave Anderson and Elaine C. Smith. His theatre work includes stints with 784 and in John Byrne's adaptation of Chekhov's Three Sisters, and film-wise he was of course in Local Hero. He's got the jumper to prove it, and he'll tell us all about it. Jonathan's given us a virtual night in round at his, or maybe he's turning up on our doorsteps just like Colin in Two Doors Down. Either way, he's armed with a Scottish album to play us, and a film to show us, and some bedtime reading for the end of the night. You'll also hear about the time he played football with prog rock titan Rick Wakeman, and the gig he played with Ali McCoist and Mel Gaynor from Simple Minds on drums. We caught up at Glasgow's Moor, where everyone knows him, and everyone loves him, and little wonder. I've just met you in the bar at Moor, Jonathan, and we've already met various people you know, including one of your teachers.
Yeah, so well, she was on the staff. I don't know if she actually told me, but one of the last times I was in seeing Play Pie and a Pint, I met my old history teacher.
Oh, how lovely!
Yeah, and so that was lovely as well.
Just sort of sitting beside you in the audience.
Yeah, she was just sitting beside me in the audience, and she leaned across and she said, "I remember you, but you won't remember me."
Oh.
And I'm kind of looking at her, and she was very glamorous looking, and she must have been about 80, 81, and it was Miss Miller, and who everybody fancied at school, everybody fancied her. So
you did remember her.
I did remember, and it's like, and you know, the great thing, she was my history teacher, and I loved history. I really enjoyed it, and. But when my mum and dad used to go, I went to Hill Head, which is nearby. When my mum and dad had parents' night, she used to always say to them, you know, encourage them to do more drama, because I used to go to the junior course at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama, and I did a lot of stuff when I was a kid, right? So, as did, you know, contemporaries like Alex Norton as well.
Yeah.
Alex went to the RSMD as well. But she used to always say, you know, encourage them to do that. But I had no plans to do it until everything changed a couple of years after leaving school.
Isn't that absolutely lovely, though, that she saw something in you and she remembered it, and ironically then you actually meet her in the audience. You're not on the stage, you know, because you still have the love for also attending theatre as much as being on the stage. I mean, when were you last on stage? Was it Man's Best Friend a couple of years ago?
It was, that was the last thing I did, which I'm very privileged because it was written for me by Douglas Maxwell, and I'd worked with Jemima Levick, who up until recently was the artistic director. I'd worked with her on a play called Fibres, written by Francis Poet. And we'd always intended to sort of join forces again, and that was the opportunity to do it, and I loved it.
Yeah, and it's such a unique atmosphere in Moor, and a Play a Pie and a Pint, isn't it?
It took me a few days to get into the stride of it, but I've only done a couple of Play Pie and a Pints, but that was the second one, but I loved it. I only performed it 11 times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
I did it a few times here and a few times in the Traverse, but to help me learn it, because it's a monologue that lasts just about an hour, and it was originally an hour and 15. We'd cut it back, and to help me memorise it, I wrote it out in longhand.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds a bit like a punishment exercise of the best kind.
Of the best
but speaking
kind,
of school,
Well, that's how I learn my lines.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I write them out. I always write them out. It was something I picked up years ago. I was doing, what was it? Satire of the Three Estates, the Edinburgh Festival that Tom Fleming directed, and David Rintoul, who was the king. He's married to Vivian Heilbron. David used to always write out his lines.
Okay.
And I thought that's a really good tip, and I've done it ever since. So.
Interesting. So that's it. And now you do it. That's part of the ritual, isn't
Part
it?
of the ritual.
Part of the routine. Has there ever been any balance between, your desire to be on stage versus the screen? Because they've both got very different challenges. You seem to embrace them both wholeheartedly. But was there ever an element of saying, right, okay, I've done that, I'd like to be back on stage, or I'd like to be behind or in front of the camera again?
No, not really. No, it's just that I always try. I try and do a play every year, or as close to as I can.
Right, that's kind of.
That's
right,
what I always kind of
interesting.
touch
Okay.
base to that.
Yeah.
So that's usually the plan.
And is that for any particular reason, or is that just a tradition now? I suppose as much as anything.
Well, it's. I just think it keeps you on your toes, and it's as you know, it's a different discipline, and I think it's good to sort of, keep it in your locker. You can do it, So yeah,
Write down
that's what I do.
Write down an hour's worth of monologue and learn it, putting shivers down my spine. Utter admiration, obviously. And yeah, it's 20 years since a play A Pie and a Pint started here at Oran Moor. But there are lots of other anniversaries, including, I cannot believe this, 40 years, is that right, of Only an Excuse?
It'll be the 40th anniversary. We stopped doing it about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's 40 years, 1986.
Wild.
The summer of 1986, me, Philip and Tony spent a weekend over in Queen Margaret Drive, recording it and doing the phone-ins. And the actual phone-ins, I was sent into another room to pick up the phone and actually phone in.
Were you?
So, yeah. So, I did.
We just couldn't get enough of it, could we?
Well, it was certainly when it started out, it was completely fresh. It was Philip's idea, but nobody had combined football and comedy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was
Which seems wild now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's completely new. This is before Off the Ball and all that kind of stuff. Nobody had done anything like it, and it really, it hit the spot. And we used to do it we used to record naked radio in the Tron on a Friday lunchtime, and we used to dabble in the odd football joke and stuff like that Tony and I used to be given. But to actually focus on something like this, which it was a spoof documentary based on Only a Game that was narrated by William McIlvanney, which we were huge fans of. But great days.
I love that everything's connected already, because you're mentioning Only an Excuse. You've now mentioned naked radio, which takes us to naked video, which takes us to... I mean, it's lovely how one thing sort of leads to another, City Lights and onwards. There's so many connections there and so many kindred spirits sharing a sort of humour that is for all of us, because I don't really know that much about sport, but I know a lot about the characters that are in sport, thanks to the way you represent them, in that weird way.
Well, I think that was one of the tricks of the writing. The writing appealed to sort of,
across the board.
So that's down to Philip and the rest of the lads that put it together.
Yeah, but what a joy to watch it. And obviously that became a bit of a staple of Hogmanay's for a long time as well. You're a very familiar face on our tellies around about that time of year, which got me thinking about you first footing us, or maybe Colin in Two Doors Down first footing us, right? Turning up at our door.
Drunk, paralytic with Cathy hanging on his elbow.
But also maybe with a Scottish album to play us, a film to show us, and maybe even a book for some bedtime reading. Okay, so it's not really Colin, it is you, but I like that vision of opening my door and you being there as you so often are.
Okay.
So if you were kind of giving us a party at yours, we'll talk about the film you would show us, and we'll talk about the book that you would give us for some bedtime reading. And by the way, don't have nightmares. That's all I'm saying about the book so far.
Okay.
But what record would you pull out for us? First of all, were you a big music fan? What was your era? Johnny?
The 70s, the early
Right,
70s.
okay.
So I actually found this quite difficult to choose because the Scottish bands that were kicking about at that time, like the sensational Alex Harvey band and maybe Irish White band, one of my things, Steelers Wheel, because I used to listen to The Who, The Stones, Led Zeppelin, The Faces, Eric Clapton, all these kind of things, Roxy music, all that kind of stuff. So, and I used to go a lot to the Apollo.
Wow.
And I've seen some fantastic bands there. And I'm pretty sure I saw the band that I've chosen in the Apollo playing support to Deep Purple.
Now, that would have been a bill. Who is it? What's the record as well?
The record is Loud and Proud, and it's by Nazareth.
I mean, can we just, first of all, talk about that title, right? Talk about a statement of intent, and all the way from Dunfermline.
Yeah. No, it's a smashing album. It's a really good album. In fact, it's produced by the bass player from Deep Purple, so there must have been a real sort of link with these guys. But no, it's the track I've chosen is This Flight Tonight,
right? Okay.
Which is a cover of Joni Mitchell's song. But Elaine C that I work with and who I'm very friendly with, she's a huge Joni Mitchell fan. And seemingly Joni Mitchell, there was loads of cover versions of This Flight Tonight, and she didn't really have much time for any of them, except for this one.
Yeah.
And sometimes when she was doing it as part of her set, she would introduce it as a Nazareth song.
Yes,
So
I've read that
what
too.
a fantastic compliment.
Absolutely. And what I love is the fact that, I mean, they're very, very different versions of it, but it was Nazareth who had the hit with it, right?
Yeah, that's right. So that's the. I think that if we played that first up, that would get everybody going. So yeah. When Queen had Bohemian Rhapsody out, I went to see them at the Apollo.
Did you?
Yeah, and they started with Bohemian Rhapsody, and I always remember that it was pitch black, and all you could hear, you knew that guys were on stage, and you could hear Freddie Mercury sing, you know, Mamma Mia, let 'em go. And then when it hit, Beelzebub is a devil, the son for me, for me, for me. Bam, bam. As soon as that happened, the whole stage lit up, white light.
Really?
Yeah, and everybody was up in stalls, circle, and you didn't sit down for the rest of the concert.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, and I've seen the Stones loads of times. I love the Stones. But that was the best concert I've ever seen. It was amazing.
The other
It was
thing
absolutely amazing.
is the theatricality of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
The choreography
Yeah.
of that is stunning.
On the flip side of that, I remember going along to see prog rock. Yes, I've seen Yes a few times.
Nice.
And they did Tales from Topographic Oceans, which is possibly one of the most pretentious double albums ever. And years ago, Chick young Derek Johnson got me to play five-a-sides in the SECC representing Scotland against an England select. And amongst the England players were John H. Stacey and Rick Wakeman. And the two of them battered lumps at me, and they're up against the boards. But I said to him after this, I said, you know, I came along to see you a few times at the Apollo. I said, saw Tales from Topographic Oceans. He said, oh, yeah. He said, I remember that. I remember we did that. He said, I sent one of the roadies out for a curry halfway through it and ate it while I was playing.
Really?
Yeah.
Carry on. Because the songs just go and go, don't they?
Yeah.
I love the fact that you said one of the most pretentious double albums of all time, because it's a statement of intent even releasing a double album, right?
Yeah.
You're already going, we're here for a while, guys, buckle in.
Yeah, buckle in. Enjoy. Yeah.
So there you go. I always think of the Apollo being more of a punk rock venue, but maybe not. Maybe it was
the first concert I saw at the Apollo was Roxy Music when Virginia Plain had just come out.
Oh, wow.
And the support act was Leo Sayer done up in his clown outfit.
Really?
Yeah. And I think the ticket was something like £2.
So you were going to loads of gigs.
Yeah,
Nazareth you particularly loved. Loud and Proud you would choose as an album that you'd certainly want to crank up and play as of a Friday evening if we were around at yours. What about your own sort of musical pursuits?
The only thing I could offer you with regard to that is when I was at school, I briefly played the clarinet.
Okay.
And I've since taken it up again.
Have you?
Yeah. Because I said to Alex Norton, I said, I'm gonna get hold of an old clarinet. have an Oxfam shop or something like that. He went, no, he said, because his son's a musician. He said, I got a Rory one. He said, he never plays it, I'll send it to you. So I got it, I started using that, and then I get quite into it, and I thought I'm going to get one that's a bit better. So I've got a nice Yamaha one.
So okay, so I suppose you're absolutely right. The sort of landscape of Scottish music in the 70s was either quite folky, or the kind of glamish thing, or which is bizarre now to think back on it, or you've actually got the funk of the average white band. What you don't have really is the proliferation as we get towards the late 70s and into the early 80s.
Into the 80s.
Of the Glasgow indie bands.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I mean, Elaine used to sing in a band that we used to go and see when we were at drama college, and a couple of guys from that ended up in Orange Juice.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know that?
Yeah.
So all these guys, Bobby Bluebell, all these guys came through, Lloyd Cole, amazing.
And the thing
Edwin Collins, all that.
Yeah, when you've got a band like the Bluebells as well, it's lovely because the Glasgow that we often saw sort of depicted on TV and certainly in a lot of books at the time was a very sort of hard and grey and macho Glasgow, and what Postcard Records did in bands like the Bluebells, which was interesting, was they totally upturned that. They were very playful and they kind of flew in the face of the stereotypes.
Yeah, and of course then from that there's some big mega bands like Simple Minds and they've gone from that. You actually were asking about any musical pursuits. I actually have fronted a band that was put together by Derek Forbes, the bass player of Simple Minds, who's a pal of mine. Okay. And Philip Differ, who I work with in Only Excuse, is an accomplished guitar player. So he put together this band that was, I can't remember the surname of the drummer from Simple Minds, Mel Gaynor.
Yep, he's some guy.
So Mel Gaynor, Derek, Philip, Trevor Stephen, who used to play with Rangers, and Ali McCoy miming to a guitar, and me as the singer, as Frank McAvenny. And we sang Kashmir, the Puff Daddy version, in front of 5,000 people in a concert for Kosovo. And I remember at the end of it, Midge came up and he went, that was kind of bizarre. He said it was kind of like Johnny Rotten-esque. just rotten, I think. But,
that is brilliant. I love the fact that had completely passed you by when I asked if you'd ever been on stage or kind of like channeled your rock.
I remember saying to Ali before my I said, how'd I look? I'm all right. And he went, wee man, he said, I can't take you seriously just now. I just can't. Don't ask.
And Ali McCoy's does a big music fan as well. He was at school with my husband, and the last time my husband bumped into him, they were at a Devo gig, I think it was.
Oh, right. Yeah. You know, he loves his music. Yeah.
That's absolutely awesome. Is there footage of this?
Yes, there is actually.
What a lineup.
Because God knows where it is, up in the garage somewhere. But at that time, my wife was heavily pregnant with her Jack at the time. I remember she had the wee video camera that we got for her wedding, and she filmed it. So there's a cassette kicking about somewhere. Honestly, with this happening.
That is gold dust.
Yeah.
I tell you what, what a lineup. I mean, I'm going to call you a supergroup.
Yeah, but that's fair enough. We'll go along with that. But I always remember Mel Gaynor, the noise he made and the drums. It was like an octopus playing. It was unbelievable.
He is a phenomenal drummer.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. He's still great. I interviewed him not that long ago. He had a new album. He started like doing, he always did backing vocals, but he started singing as well.
Oh,
He's got a brilliant voice.
Right, amazing.
Yeah, so maybe you can get back together. Maybe you can get the band back together.
I saw Derek recently. I'll mention that to him.
Have a word with them.
Yeah.
So, but you're going to go for Nazareth anyway. This is your album, Loud and Proud. Did you have it on a vinyl cassette? Do you remember what you had it on?
Listen, don't do that. Everything was in vinyl back then. I'll get rid of a lot of my vinyl collection before it became fashionable. But I kept about 25. I let Philip look through and see. I said, then there you want to keep. And I kept about 25. Okay. Sort of iconic albums like I had the Blondie Picture album, you know, and Led Zeppelin 3 with a wee crown, stuff like that. Yeah. So I kept these. But yeah, the majority was in vinyl, and then on to CD, and then my wife got rid of all these there in the garage somewhere. So it's come back round.
I love that you kept a few though. There were obviously these kind of treasured sounds. You were like, okay, I'll get rid of it, but no way am I letting go of these.
No, like Tommy as well, the double album from great stuff.
That's a more forgivable double album, right, Tommy?
Oh no, that's
Than Tales from Topographic
yeah,
Oceans. I've got a lot of love in my heart for ES, but I do like the story of getting a curry in the middle of a gig.
Yeah,
quite into that.
There was a prog rock radio station that ran out of Ben Lawers and Glen Lyon, in Perthshire for a little while. My husband's an archaeologist, so you'd be driving about and I'd be tuning into this sort of homegrown prog rock station.
Oh, really?
This is just a few years ago. Well, sorry, it's not. As when I met him, it was over 20 years ago. Anyway, so whenever we were up there, I would tune in and it was brilliant. And the guy would play just like a song by Camel. And we were like, oh, that'll be him away to get his dinner, because he would have half an hour before the song was finished.
70-minute single. Yeah.
But it was a brilliant thing, just ran all day long.
Oh,
and the guy could probably put on one record, go and do his garden, come back, bit more prog rock, away and do something else. I know, a lot to be said for it. Nazareth never went down that path. I do love that Joni Mitchell completely embraced Nazareth by way of that song, though. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, I listened to it before it came out, actually. He sounds great. Because he passed away fairly recently, Dan McCarthy, didn't he?
Yeah, and I mean, I think the Agnews' various offspring play with all sorts of bands now. I think one of them was playing with Faye Fife as the Countess of Fife for a while.
Right, okay.
So I love that the musical legacy is like on and on.
On and on, fantastic.
Everything comes back to Nazareth and Dunfermline. All right, so you've blasted our eardrums with that, okay? We've all sang along, maybe even listened to the Joni Mitchell version as well. And after that, we're going to put on a movie.
Right.
Now, before you tell us about the movie in question, I'm going to ask you about another film and a bit of merchandise.
All right.
Because I was speaking to Dave Anderson earlier.
Yeah.
About Local Hero.
Oh, yeah.
And he was wearing a Local Hero jumper.
Yeah. We were given these at the end.
I hear you got one as well.
Yeah, I've got one. But I never wore mine. Mine's split new. Mine, it's in the garage. It's in a box in the garage. But the Dave...
Can we do a whole day just in your garage?
Yeah, oh God, don't. My wife's on me all the time. But it was a navy blue Guernsey fisherman's jumper.
They're lovely. I've seen one now.
Yeah, but they were like bulletproof.
Right.
I mean, you put them on, you couldn't move. But Dave, he wore his pretty constantly. I mean, you're talking about, we got them in 1982.
It's looking good.
Yeah, but I never really wore mine. But
kept it.
I kept it. Yeah, but we got given these.
How lovely.
At the end, yeah.
What are your memories? How long were you up there?
We were on for 4 weeks in the West Coast. So Dave wasn't. He was in a different hotel, but we were in Glenfinnan at the top of Loch Shiel, and then we would minibus or whatever to filming in Camanstarick Bay, which is near Arisaig, and then flipped over to Pennon, to the East Coast for 3 weeks, and me, Tam Dean Byrne, Jimmy Yule, and Charlie Kearney had a cottage that looked over the bay.
Oh,
and I think Charlie got it. He said, I've got us a deal. And it was, for the 3 weeks we were there, I think it was £11 each.
And with that view as well, and that company.
Yeah. So, but I've been back to see, because last year was the 40th. No, what screen was it? Was it the...
I think it was, because I spoke to
it was last year.
Dennis and Peter, and Peter was on the phone from America, which felt very apt for the interview.
Yeah,
so I think it must have been last year.
It was two, because it went out. We filmed it in 82. It went out in 83.
Yeah.
So we went up to Pennon, and God, we were staying in the Balm Springs Hotel, and I remember the last time we were in there was with me and Jimmy Yule and Tam. We'd gone in for a drink. So
what was it like seeing that film when it was finished? Because it's got magical properties, Local Hero. I think all of Bill Forsyth's films do, but...
Well, it was kind of... I didn't go to any screening of it because I was doing another job.
Of course, you just got to keep going, right? On to the next thing.
So, but I went to see it one afternoon at the ABC that's been demolished just now.
Oh, I know, it's awful.
So I saw it in there. But I think it's always, if you're involved in it, you view it in a different way. I didn't appreciate the magical side of it that you're talking about. But however, when we were up last year for the anniversary screening, which they did in Banff, in the open air on a giant screen, and it was a lovely night, and it was kind of magical watching that, actually.
Yeah.
So, but I've got good memories from it. It was a great gig to do. Wonderful folk in it, and yeah, I loved it.
I love the thought of you guys in the cottage. That's just brilliant. That's a film in itself.
Yeah, well, yeah. Ex-certificate.
But you're going to play us in our virtual night in Round at Yours, another film by Bill Forsyth.
Yeah, I've chosen Gregory's Girl because I just think it's a film that captures the adolescent years so brilliantly.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautifully performed by everybody in it. And I know a lot of the guys in it. And I just think it's a wonderful film. And I say it, you know, I don't mean it patronising by saying it's a lovely wee film, but I just have that affection for it, do you know?
Yeah.
It's just, I think the way that the comedy is played so naturally, it's just so perfect. And I think that's one of the reasons why it doesn't age. It's just something that's lovely to revisit.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great film.
And also, what's so lovely about it is, in one aspect of it, it's just so much about the day-to-day and time kind of passing in its own gentle way. But you've also got the surrealism as well. You know, you've got the penguin, you've got all these unexpected kind of like quantities, and we just go with it, right? We can just take that. It's fine.
Yeah, but that's Bill's, the magic of Bill, and just dropping these little things in. It's smashing, it really is.
And the possibilities as well of films being made here in Scotland, in Glasgow. We'd had that sinking feeling as well, and you've got Bill.
Well, that was just. I think it couldn't have been a year, no more than a year before that they made that.
Yeah, it's a close run thing.
Yeah. So yeah, no, with the likes of Bill, he was at the forefront of that, and yeah, he's a great guy.
But I think also it's the way in which, you know, families are depicted in it and romance is depicted in it. It's just so lovely. There's nothing sort of cliched about it, but it's really familiar somehow.
Oh no, we've all been all this duff dates and dates starting working out. It's like, it's fantastic. It's just it's perfect, and they play it so well. Yeah.
And all in Cumbernauld. I grew up in Stirling, so obviously it was like, how can this be? It was bizarre enough that things were happening in Glasgow or in Scotland, and especially when, as I say, someone like Local Hero looked utterly magical and otherworldly, or Chariots of Fire on the beach in St Andrews. It was like, what's happening around about this place? But it felt really exciting because it was all happening here. And then you could go to the cinema.
And see it.
Yeah, it was a big deal. You must have been on some fairly divergent sets over the years, Jonathan. You mentioned up there being on the beaches for Local Hero. We've seen you inside a changing Glasgow landscape over the years in something like City Lights. And then you got Doctor Who. What a contrast.
Yeah, Doctor Who was... I did that over about a year during lockdown.
What was that like?
It was one of the most magical jobs ever. And it kind of grew arms and legs because Andy Pryor, who casts it, he'd come on to my agent. I think he'd been trying to get me involved before, and he said, look, would Jonathan read this part? It was a Friday, and would he tape for it? And I taped for it on the Saturday, sent it off. They saw it on the Monday, and the contract was drawn up on the Tuesday.
Really?
It was very quick.
Wow.
And it was directed by Sally Magnuson's son.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Jamie Magnus Stone, and he was brilliant. He was absolutely fantastic. And he said to me, he uttered the words that I'll cherish forever. Because initially I was just maybe going to do a couple of eps. And then I knew the producers were happy because they came out and they said, look, we love what you're doing all this. And when I wrapped in the first block, he said, listen, I think you're going to be asked back. And I said, oh, great start. He says, yes, because they've put your spaceship in storage. Because I had one spaceship. It's
the inside line.
Inside line.
Wonderful.
So, you know, as a result, once it went out, right, and you can't tell anybody about it.
No.
You've got to sign, like, top secret documents. You can't say anything. So you can't say anything for about a year and a half. And but as soon as it went out, it's all thumbs up, and you get invited to Doctor Who conventions.
Oh, of course.
So I ended up in Los Angeles for a week, and sitting beside Sylvester McCoy, who I'd done Three Sisters with at the Tron a few years before. And so we're sitting signing autographs. And this guy came up, dressed. He was about 6'2", and he had a beard. But he was dressed, wig, whole bit, as Jodie Whittaker. The rainbow jumper, the thing, everything. And he came up and went, "Hi, how are you doing?" And I said, "I'm good, thank you." And, you know, thanked me for restoring the Sontarn Emperor to its rightful place in the galaxy. And then he goes, he said, "I want you to sign this for me." And he went in his pocket and he brought out a box set of Two Doors Down. And I'm going, "You're kidding
After
me."
all that.
And Sylvester's going to say, "You're in that. Shut up."
Isn't that utterly brilliant though, right?
Yeah,
it's like you're different, and my goodness, what different roles and different characters,
Yeah,
but they follow you around.
But it was a great job to do, and I hadn't been in Cardiff before, but it was just one of these places that I just felt at home right away, and I loved working there, and it was bizarre, you know. I was going down. I found it actually. I was clearing out some stuff, and I found my letter from the Doctor Who office in case I get stopped by the police on the way down.
Because it was locked down.
Because it was locked down. So I'm driving down the M6. What's that car to be seen? The whole way down. You see about 6 cars. It's mental.
With a letter from Doctor Who, effectively.
Well, yes. Please excuse Jonathan. Here's a Sontarn there. It's commander.
I kind of wish I had been stopped, because with all due respect and a great deal of love, I feel like the police wouldn't have believed you. They'd be like, "That can't be real,
That can't
letter."
be real, I know.
There's no way. Do you think they've got the official Doctor Who stamp in the record of like authorised letters?
They must do.
Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah.
And then you go to the convention and somebody pulls out a Two Doors Down box set. Oh, that's so lovely.
All made up.
I do wonder if there's something about the attraction of Two Doors Down that maybe resonates a little bit with our love of something like Gregory's Girl, in that it's a sort of quiet celebration of the humdrum, you know, the sort of domestic.
I think the thing with Two Doors Down is that the Gregor and Simon wrote such well-defined characters that people could relate to all over.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I mean, out of all the stuff I've done, I don't think there's been anything that has got the recognition of it. I mean, I remember standing, you know, my first day in Doctor Who, I've got a mask on, I've got a hat on, all you can see my glasses, and a guy comes up and goes, "When's Two Doors Down coming back?"
Oh, really?
And all you can see is that, and you think, so.
That's
but
lovely.
I think people relate to. Everybody knows a Colin and Kathy. Everybody knows a Christine. Do you know what I mean? So I think all these, you know, that's the hook with that.
Did you instantly warm to him when you first came across Colin's character? Like, I don't know exactly how that happened.
Well, the Colin thing, I got asked to go down. Two Doors Down started as a one-off, 1 hour special.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I don't know. My gut feeling is that somebody pulled out, some big name, pulled out of a project at the last minute, and they were left with this gaping hole from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock on New Year's Eve on BBC One Network.
Ah, okay.
And
right.
very quickly, we were all assembled, and we filmed for 10 days solid in a small council house in Paisley from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. Wow. And we rattled it all off. And it was only when we wrapped that I heard Doon's real accent, because she spoke in a Scottish accent the whole time.
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, and then it took off, and it was about a year and a half later before we were all brought back to do the series. But yeah, it was a. So the point of the story is I went down to see them. It was like the Thursday, and everything was done by the Monday.
God, that's amazing.
Yeah, everybody was put together. It was done very quickly. Yeah.
But maybe also that's just, you know, the dynamic between the characters. And as you say, these very, very clearly defined, identifiable roles, right?
Well, I read a few things for Simon. He went, "No, that's it. That's exactly it."
Yeah, we got you. It's Colin. Even when you're in your mask and Doctor Who and a visor and everything else, and you're completely in disguise. There's no shaking it. Well, okay, we've had a chat about a record and we've had a chat about a film, and they're both very, very lovely things. You've chosen us a book, and I was going to say for some bedtime reading. I'm not necessarily sure if we would sleep too easy after it. Jack House, Squarewell Murder, Horrific Glasgow Killings. Can't get a better title than that.
Well, it's Square Mile of Murder. He wrote it in the early 60s. Right? And I'm from this neck of the woods. I was brought up in St George's Cross. It's not that far down here. But Jack House was a fixture in Byres Road. Quite a distinctive old man.
Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Right.
And he used to drink in the Curlers.
Okay.
So he was a well-known columnist in either the Herald or the Times or whatever. But he was in his own right, he was an author, and he put together this book that featured perhaps the most famous murders in Scotland that all happened within this square mile.
Around about sort of Charing Cross area.
So I was brought up in St George's Cross, which was just on the edge, right? And I knew about this book when I was at primary school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because my dad had gone to the School of Art, right? And graduated commercial artist, which would be like a graphic artist today. That was in the 30s. So on a Sunday, I would get dragged up to Kelvin Grove to look around the upstairs and all the different paintings. Or sometimes we would go up to Blythswood Square, because the Glasgow School of Art had a building that was in Blythswood Square, corner Blythswood Square and Blythswood Street. And he would take me up. I don't know, it could be an exhibition by Bud Neal, the famous cartoonist from Lobidos and all that stuff. So, and if we were up there, my dad would always say, as we turned to get in Blythswood Street, because there's about 3 wee windows that follow the line of the pavement, and he would say, that's where Madeline Christie used to give her boyfriend the hot chocolate that was laced with arsenic, right? Okay. So she used to hand it, she would hand it to him through the...
But you're being shown
exactly
where it's
what it was.
happening, right? So your imagination would be so fired up by that.
Plus, and so there's that. There was that case, the Madeline Christie one, which is probably one of the most famous ones. But the other one happened quite close to where we stayed in West Princes Street. It was the murder of Marion Gilchrist.
Yeah.
And that was the case where Oscar Slater served 20 years for a crime he didn't commit. One of the biggest miscarriages of justice. But I used to pass her house, if you like, which was by then a dental laboratory in West Princes Street. It was a dental lab. But I used to pass that on the way to Drama College every morning. I used to cross the road, cross the Western Road, round Queen's Crescent, along West Princes Street, up St George and all that. Plus, at the end of St George's Road at Charing Cross Mansions, that's where Oscar Slater stayed. Right. And he used to always stand at the close at the bottom. And the other link with that is when he was released from Peterhead, thanks to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, he remarried and moved to Ayr and lived the rest of his days out there. And my grandpa Watson passed him in Ayr one day.
Oh no!
So he actually saw him.
Oh really?
Yeah.
My goodness.
So there was always that link, and then I read the book when I was in my late teens, and I always remember I finished it at lunchtime one day, and I left the house and I went and visited the 4 locations where the murders were.
Okay, of these 4 murders, it's fascinating how connected you felt to the stories because you were passing them. You know, it's like actually the proximity to them. This Square Mile of Murder by this man who, he was a journalist, and I think he wrote lots and lots of books. This is his sort of most celebrated or notorious, I suppose. And he became known as Mr. Glasgow because he enlivened the streets and he brought the streets to life in such a vivid way. For so many
well,
people,
it's a great account, and I don't think it's as gory as you'd think it might be.
It's more the thrilling aspect, isn't it? It's the thriller element.
But it's full of amazing facts. I mean, one of the other murders was a guy called Pritchard, Dr. Pritchard. If you see photographs of him, I mean, he is right out of a horror movie.
Oh, that detail.
Yeah.
That's the sort of detail, like that level of intricate, vivid storytelling.
Yeah.
Right, of Jack House is fascinating. And I think when he died in 91-ish, thereabouts.
Did he? Is that, yeah.
And yeah, so the Evening Times, he'd written there for a long time, had called him Mr. Glasgow, but there was also the sort of reflection on the fact that, you know, so often, especially that sort of era of Glasgow, sort of Edwardian, Victorian era, it's always kind of depicted as being very dark and there being lots of slums and disease, but he also was very vivid in talking about, there was splendour as well, you know,
very
there were
much
lots
so.
of other
And
elements, and he sheds light on that.
That's why a lot of these cases weren't resolved, because they got off them because they were in the sort of upper echelons of society.
Yeah, but I love the fact that you knew about the book, you knew about these locations, so when you got your hands on it, it must have just been
great.
I mean, the excitement of getting a book like that and delving into the stories, like that never goes, does it?
I know,
amazing.
it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I've been fortunate. I've been to Gulf Tracks lately. My favourite book is one that my dad gave me when I was 8, and it's called The Pictorial History of the Wild West. Right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's an American book, and it's the book that William Goldman used for back reference and research for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Oh, perfect. Oh,
because it charts the West from 1830 up until about 1915, 1912, 1915. And I always remember when it's got loads of photographs of all these real characters. And I always remember my dad saying, "Do you realise," he said, your Nana Watson was a young girl when these guys were about."
Yeah.
And you go,
but that's so brilliant because it's making the connection. It's a bit like your dad pointing you out the window where the hot chocolate was handed.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very visual way of telling stories, but it's so powerful because they never leave you then. You walk past, as you say, these particular houses on your way to college or whatever, and every single time it's reinforced a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah. And you pass it on as well.
Yeah.
I know I've done. So,
Yeah, because that's the way you learn to tell a story.
Yeah.
What happens when, you know, a script comes your way? Does it take different times to engage with something? Is it sometimes an instant, like, I have got to do this? Other times, does it take a bit more reflection?
It just depends. I mean, there are things like two most recent stage things that I've done have been Man's Best Friend and Fibres.
Yeah.
And with both of these, it was instant, I've got to do these.
And Fibres, this was one about the asbestos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was about the effects of asbestos in the west of Scotland. And I mean, if you think you know about it, you've heard about it, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, the story, beautifully told by Francis. So with these two scripts, right away, you know, it doesn't always happen like that.
No.
You know, sometimes you go, "God, is this any good? Am I reading this right?" You know,
Yeah.
and sometimes you need to hear a room. You need to hear other voices and a read through to bring it to life, and you go, I get it now. You know. But sometimes you go, no, I get this.
Yeah.
I get this.
Or maybe, I don't know what happened with Bob Servant, but are there sometimes cases where you're familiar with the character already? I don't know at what point.
No.
Okay.
But with Bob,
It just makes me laugh even.
well, that's one of my favourite jobs ever. We still keep in touch. I was meant to see Neil Forsyth on Friday, but he's called off.
Oh,
But,
Neil, come on.
So I know, get a grip, Neil. What happened with that was I didn't know about the books. I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Right. I knew that they were doing it at Radio Scotland, but I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And the part of Frank is actually ages with Bob.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm 10 years younger than Brian. Right. And it was my agent she pestered him, said, "Look, I think you should get Johnny to see Johnny for this." So I went through to Edinburgh, and you know, it's one of these things. I didn't even learn the lines.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't. I thought, well, I'd worked with Annie Griffin before. I'd been cast and stuff by Orla Connor before, and I knew Owen Bell, the producer. I thought, this would be fine. And I didn't know. Honestly, if it had been in the back of my head, I didn't know that everybody and their granny was up for this. So I just went in, and I know that Annie likes to improvise sometimes.
Okay.
And she said, "So, Jonathan," she said, "what's Frank like?" Like that. And I just started doing stuff. And it was only afterwards Owen Bell said, "As soon as you did that, you got the part."
Oh, really?
Yeah. But that was the scripts for these. They were just brilliant. So well written, and it was just a joy to do that job. Yeah.
Again, it's a wee bit like the characters in Two Doors Down, in as much as we sort of feel like we know, we so
kinda
much
know
have got the measure of, you thrill in the fact that they do what you want them to do and a bit more.
Yes.
Such good fun.
Great job to do.
Totally. And long may they continue. We're going to get chucked out of here soon. I've just seen the time, so we better wind this up. It's been so lovely to chat to you. Thank you for...
I hope I haven't prattled on too long.
You've been absolutely brilliant. No, we're in great time, but I'm just loving the fact that I'm going to delve back into the square mile of murders. It seems a lovely way to have my train journey back to Stirling enlivened.
Get a hold of it. It's a fantastic
I've got
book.
it.
You've got it?
I got it, absolutely. I didn't get the original copy because that was going to set me back 60 quid. But you
Is
can
that
get a new paperback of it, yes.
Is that right, really?
Yeah, I got it on my Kindle though as well, so it is accessible to everybody.
Well, I hope you enjoy
I've
it.
been loving it. But I've also been loving the Glasgow. It's a different Glasgow than maybe I imagined at that time, and I think what a powerful way of telling stories,
Yeah,
it's been amazing.
It's fantastic. Oh, great stuff. Good.
Anyway, let's go downstairs and see if we can chat to any more of your teachers. Jonathan,
Oh, God, no, they're nearly all dead. Don't worry about it.
Apart from that one that sat next to you. I love that in the audience. Thank you so much. It's been lovely to chat to you.
Pleasure.
The lovely Jonathan Watson there. Here's hoping he gets that supergroup back together. If you fancy seeing him in action, Bob Servant, Local Hero, Doctor Who, Only an Excuse and Two Doors Down are all streaming now. I keep hoping that City Lights is going to pop up back on iPlayer. If it does so, rest assured, I'll keep you posted. If you want to hear more about Gregory's Girl, you can catch up on episodes of A Kick Up the Arts with its glorious star Claire Grogan, and also with fellow fans like King Creosote and Dave Anderson, the latter of whom of course played Gregory's dad. There's also an episode with the Bluebells' Bobby Bluebell and Skin from Hipsway if you fancy hearing more about Glasgow and music in the late 70s and early 80s. And speaking of music, this week's podcast recommendation is the terrific Back to Now podcast. It's a joyous deep dive into the wonder of now that's what I call music, and it is as riveting and as varied as the compilations that it celebrates. Alright, I'll give you peace. I'm Nicola Meehan. This is A Kick Up the Arts. Thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear from you wherever you are. Get in touch. You can email Nicola at akickupthearts.org, or you can find me on social media. And don't forget to get tickets for that podcast party at Granite Noir in Aberdeen. Get your tickets. See you there, hopefully.